I can tell you one thing, if you're an Enhancement Shaman enjoyer, then you're gonna love this build. The July update patch changes did add up a little bit of stuff for enhancement, especially buffing up standard Storm Strike and Lava Lash skills in conjunction with shocks, for example. And this actually creates this build. We basically rely on offensive Enhancement Shaman toolkit, so all the 3 shocks, Storm Strike and Lava Lash, with Lava Lash being the big juicy hitter. The basic premise of this build is to cast as many shocks as possible before you even press the Lava Lash or Storm Strike button, as each shock increases their damage by 20%. That stacks up to 3 times. So in total during combat you can get it up to 60% increased damage, which on top of all the good stuff that we're gonna get is equaling in some very juicy crits that can get up to even 500 on level 50, so pretty damn good, I would say. I love it because the playstyle is so fast paced and it's a true hybrid. We're using the shock spells with some juicy, very powerful melee attacks, kind of a like elemental warrior. And to be fair, it deals out crazy amounts of damage, especially that I still managed to out DPS things like Titanic Mutilate or Dark Intent Sinister Strike spam, so this means that the damage of this build is no joke. This build can be made even more fun if you manage to actually get Maelstrom Weapon and Lava Burst, although we don't really have that much space for it, because we would have to sacrifice all the important things to make some space, and to be honest, this is just a fun factor. The power is still there. You usually run around with standard shock toolkit, but having rolled the Stone Shard instead of Earth Shock is a very big quality of life change, because Stone Shard does have reduced global cooldown, which makes you dish out damage even faster, and the cooldown is not being shared with other shocks, so you have more options to deal damage. It has longer cooldown, although it can be reset by dealing damage with your elemental skills. So basically everything we do except for Storm Strike can reset its cooldown. It can even reset its cooldown off itself, so sometimes you can even spam 2 Stone Shards in a row, which is pretty hilarious. In this playthrough, I'm playing Frostbrand on main hand and Flametongue on the offhand to increase the Lava Lash damage, and Frostbrand on main hand because, yeah, that extra slow is very good, especially that Frost Shock only slows for 2 seconds, so it's very useful. But if you feel like don't need it, you can go for Wine Fury for extra damage or double Flametongue, because I was just lucky to roll Frostbrand. I didn't card it. But also Frostbrand has some very cool interactions and damage increases if certain talents are being rolled, which for the moment I don't have. But let's get straight into the point, so we're gonna have a look at the build breakdown. So as most melee, we want to go for strength and crit mostly. I started this build with Storm Strike, Charge, Seal of Wisdom, because yes, casting those shocks is quite mana expensive, and Earth Shock, which I already don't have because I picked up Stone Shard along the way. But the Earth Shock is a very good starter and the only shock you can take on level 1. For ability cards, for damaging skills, you want to take Lava Lash, of course, bread and butter of the build, Frost Shock, and Flametongue Weapon. I did roll Flame Shock along the way. I wouldn't really card it because you can stack your powering buff with just 2 shocks, casting one after the other. So there's no point, and there are more important things like stun, for example, blink for extra mobility, and CC removal, and divine protection, of course, because as a melee you're very susceptible to damage, especially from ranged, so divine protection just makes you live longer. For talents, I went for enhanced weapon mastery because it increases all damage done and crit chance of Storm Strike, Lava Lash, and your enhancement weapons. Overheated strikes are not really good for this build because the only ability that hits with 2 weapons is Storm Strike, and we're actually using quite a lot of shocks, so we are not utilizing those as much as possible. So that was my mistake. I didn't change it. I would definitely go for Lava Flows to increase that crit damage from Lava Lash. Then we go for improved Storm Strike. I went for it because it restores mana, and mana is a very big issue, to be honest, especially, you know, in short fights, not really, but you'll see yourself out of mana very, very quickly if you don't take it. Crossfire Collapse. Lava Lash increases damage the target takes from the Flame Shock and Frost Shock by 100% for 10 seconds. This makes our Frost Shocks very powerful. It can crit up to 400 if stacked very nicely. But remember that this is not a buff on you, but a debuff on the target. So if you're attacking a new target, it's not going to increase the damage. This is the bread and butter of the build, Elemental Fusion. So casting Shaman Shocks increases damage of your Storm Strike and Lava Lash by 20%. Stacks up to 3 times and lasts 12 seconds. Each next shock that you use basically is going to refresh the duration and add up a stack. But do keep in mind that Frost Shock, Earth Shock and Flame Shock have an individual 10-second internal cooldown on triggering this effect. But it's no problem because you apply 12-second duration with Earth Shock, for example, then you cast Frost Shock, you get another 12-second duration and 2 stacks, and then when your Earth Shock is back up, you're going to cast it. This is after that individual internal cooldown, so it's going to add up a 3rd stack. So just make sure you use different shocks constantly to keep up the buff, because this is 60% extra damage for Storm Strike and Lava Lash, which is quite big. Mental Quickness is good for this one because we will be running with Flame Tongue weapons, and Flame Tongue weapons give us spell power, so nice to have. Molten Earth, you would say that this is too passive and too static to be useful in PvP, but yeah, especially when you're fighting melee or you're sitting 24/7 on some caster, this is going to add up, especially that it's an AoE debuff on the ground, so it adds up damage very nicely. And the last but not least is Spirit Weapons, because it not only increases your weapon enhancement damage, but also increases bonus damage of Lava Lash when your offhand weapon is enchanted with Flame Tongue. We're also going to take a look at the Mystic Ancients. We want to, of course, power up Lava Lash as much as possible. So Voodoo Power increases damage of Lava Lash and Storm Strike by 4% of your bonus spell damage. That's why Mental Quickness and Spell Power and overall is quite important. Hasty Lava Lash to reduce the cooldown 3 times. Powerful Lava Lash to increase the damage. Primal Lava Lash to have some extra healing and extra strength every 20 seconds. Focused Lava Lash 2 times just to increase the bonus scaling. And Hasty Storm Strike to have it up more often. If you want to take a look at the damage breakdown, Lava Lash, most hitting ability, 500 crits. Molten Earth, as you can see, 2nd place in total. It can tick up to like 64, but it ticks every second, so pretty good damage for a dot. Stone Shot, 250 crit. Storm Strike, 174, but it hits with both weapons, so it's probably around 350. Frost Shock, almost 400. Flame Tongue attack, as you can see, and Frostbrand doing pretty good damage as well. Overheated Strike, minimal damage basically, so not really worth it, like I said. I do have Whirlwind because I rolled it accidentally, and sometimes it gets useful because from time to time there is a small downtime because all your abilities are on cooldown, so it's useful to use it then. So that will be, guys, if you're an Enhancement Shaman lover, this build is definitely gonna shine for you. I've been enjoying it lately very, very much, and I hope you will as well. So thank you for watching, and may the RNG gods be always with you. Take care.